Welcome to the McGraw Council Show. We're bullish on the American dream, and we're bullish on your future.
Hello, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How has 2020 been for you? It's been a little bit of an unusual year, to say the least.
Yes, I would argue it's the most unusual year in about 100 years.
You know, it's so funny. I've heard a couple of people say that. It's very true, though. There are a lot of striking similarities to, the Spanish flu about 100 years ago.
hmm Yeah, I watched a documentary on it and I read a book on it, and it's like terrifyingly similar. Like they had anti-maskers back
Oh,
then as
really?
well. Yeah.
Fascinating. I think there are obviously, like you're saying, there are some key similarities. I think one of the biggest pain points this time around is the speed at which we conduct business, information, transactions, everything happens so fast. So, because I was reading something kind of similar too, they went into certain types of shutdowns and lockdowns back then, but the effects of it today with the rate at which we conduct business, it's just a relative comparison that's so much more impactful today. I mean, you stop business 100 years ago, things change, but you stop business today, and it's like everything comes to a standstill, especially compared to the fast business cycle that we're used to.
hmm Yeah. No, that's a really good point.
It's definitely been interesting. So please tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Chris. What's the life story?
Sure, sure. So, um, I grew up in Florida, pretty close to the beach, and I have lots of injuries to prove that I was really into
Oh
extreme
no.
sports.
All right. So which ones?
I have, concussions, multiple
Oh dang.
shoulder dislocations, hip dislocations,
Wow. That's
knee
like
hyperextension.
BMX type stuff.
No, not even like like I go to a lot of chiropractors, a lot of physical therapists, and they're like, "Damn, dude, were you like a bull rider or something?" And I'm like, "Nah, I was just really into like wakeboarding and extreme tubing with all my idiot friends."
Fun memories though, right?
Oh, the best. I
Oh yeah.
mean, yeah, it was so much fun.
Please
And
keep going.
my dad just driving the boat, like, and we're like, "Dad, do you want to like take a turn on the tubes?" He's like, "Nah, I just love like messing you guys up."
Those are some of the best memories with family and friends. Like, it's awesome that your dad got to be part of it.
Oh yeah. No, my dad basically just like forced me to do so much fun stuff. Like I remember being like 6, and I'm 35, so I might be a bit older than you. And I just remember being 6 and him being like, "Hey, I bought you some rollerblades." And I was like, "What the hell are rollerblades?"
Baptism by fire, the best way to go. Oh,
Yeah,
real
yeah.
quick too. Where in Florida, by the way?
Clearwater, Tampa
Oh
area.
yeah. Cool area. A cool
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, yeah. It was a real fun place to grow up. And the first day we went rollerblading, I didn't know how to do it. He's like, "All right, here's how to do it. All right, and now we're gonna go for a 6 mile ride." And it was so much fun that like I didn't even care that the rollerblades didn't fit correctly. And when I got home, I had like oyster-sized blisters on like
Oh
both sides of my
man.
ankles. I'm like 6, and my mom is like, "What did you do to my son?"
Oh, is that fun? What fun memories though, man.
Oh yeah,
So did you
yeah,
go to school in Florida then?
yeah. So Florida has a really great uh, college program where if you get a certain GPA and a certain SAT score, and you go to a state school, it's 100% free. So, I had really good grades and really good standardized test scores, and a lot of my family were like, "Yo, you need to go to some sort of Ivy League. You need to be like the first in the family to do
Go to
something
Harvard,
like
go to
that.
Yale, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, something like that. And I was like, man, I'm 18. I have no idea what I want to, or I was 17 at the time. I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, but I know that I do not want student loan.
You don't want that college debt, man.
Yeah, no, I really, really am not a huge fan of that. And there was so I ended up just going to University of Central Florida,
Mhm.
because it was, it was far enough away from my house that I felt like I was going away to college, but close enough where I could still like go home if I
Yep.
got tired of eating ramen.
Because they're in Orlando, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay, I got you. So you
Yep.
go to UCF for college, and if you don't mind me asking, what was the major?
So the major was a bit of a hodgepodge. I initially majored in partying, which was really really fun. And then I was like, well, I guess I got to choose something here. So I initially started in film school, but I quickly realized that that was probably not going to deliver the future I was looking for. So I basically just started taking classes that I thought were interesting. I took creative writing classes, history classes, philosophy classes, business classes, and any class that I thought was interesting, I would just take. And eventually, my advisor was like, "Bro, you're never going to be able to graduate doing all this." And I was like, "All right, well, how the hell do I graduate?" And they like shuffled some papers, and they're like, "All right, we'll just make up a degree for you." And they just made one up, and it basically just had 5 areas of study. It was like I got 5 minors instead of one major and one minor. It was
Diverse portfolio.
yeah. It was great. I loved
Nice.
it.
So
Yeah.
transition us then. So you graduate UCF.
Mhm.
What's the transition to where you are now, what you're doing now, and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I always knew that I hated people telling me what to do. From a very early
Like
age.
to be your own boss, huh?
Yeah, sure. So I did end up unfortunately graduating like in the height of the 2008 recession.
Oh, that's a tough time.
So a lot of my friends who, I, I was a fifth year senior. I had a victory lap, as I like to call it. A lot of my friends that graduated in 2007, like they still didn't have a job and were just miserable and hating life. And I was like, yeah, I don't want any part of that. So I applied to grad school to get my MBA at
Okay.
UCF. So it was literally I graduated on a Friday and grad school started that following Monday.
Oh wow. Yeah, like no time off immediately into the next then.
No. And I was like, all right, cool. I guess I can like hide out in grad school. And grad school was like hilariously cheap. I think like my entire program was 11 grand.
Oh wow.
And
Hey,
then,
hard work and good grades pay off.
yeah.
So
Um,
so did you
yeah.
get the 1 year or 2 year MBA?
So it was initially supposed to be like the executive 1 year MBA full time, but luckily, within about 3 months of me being in the program, I was just like applying for jobs for fun, just to see what was out there. And within 3 months, I had interviewed at probably 30 different companies.
Hmm.
And my first I was like really nervous and like trying to make a good impression. They were like, yeah, no, not this guy. And by my 30th interview, I like gave 0 Fs. And I was just like, yeah, I'd crush it at this job because I'm super creative and really outgoing and fun. And I would just like, you guys would be so lucky to have me. And I just so happened to somehow convince NASA to interview me, and I had that same attitude, and they were like, "Wow, we need this guy. He's a real go-getter."
That's awesome. Okay, so keep going, keep going.
Yeah. So NASA was like, "Yeah, we want to hire you," and I was like, I was like, hold up, what? I was like, yeah, I'm in. What job is this? I didn't even know what this
Priceless.
job was for. And they're like, oh yeah, you'll be a budget analyst. And I was like, cool, sounds good. And it turns out a budget analyst is basically an accountant, and being an accountant totally sucks.
Not for you, huh?
No, no. Maybe there's people out there that love accounting, but I am not one of
You know what? I've definitely seen that. There are definitely people out there who have a true passion for it, and it's awesome. I knew very early on in college, I'm like, one accounting, I kind of had a hunch before I took the accounting class because I majored in business economics. And that first accounting class, like, okay, this is official. I do not want to get into accounting. But yeah, there are people who just have a passion about it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and like my hat is off to them. More power to them because like I am not gonna do that.
Okay, so budget analyst, keep going.
Yeah, so I was a budget analyst for NASA, and I don't know if you've ever worked for the government or have had friends who've worked for the government, but it's basically filled with a bunch of like unemployable dinosaurs who would have been fired decades ago.
Okay, I got to quick take a note here because that's going to be the joke of the joke of the whole podcast right there.
And I mean, it was just it was unbearable. My all of my bosses were just, I mean, inept at best. Like I and like my direct boss couldn't even type on a computer. And I'm like, how are you going to do like our entire job is emails? Like
Government
how
historically trails business by several years, and at that time, especially, I mean, it's a little farther behind what it should have been. But yeah, that's trailing it.
yeah, it was frightening. And no one really had any work to do. It was just like just office politics, bureaucracy, just like presenting boring data that like hardly ever changed. And I'm like, yeah, this is great that I get to work for NASA. And I saw a ton of launches, which were amazing. Like I saw all of the final shuttle launches. I was there when SpaceX was coming on board, and
Oh wow.
I got to actually be in some of the meetings with SpaceX and like watch like our side just like crap their pants, dealing with like what is essentially a lean startup,
Hmm.
and how they operate just 1,000% opposite of I don't know whatever you would call the government a
Yeah,
fat startup.
fascinating. So, how long did you work at NASA?
I worked there for just under 2 years, about like 20 months or so. I knew basically the first day. I was like, yeah, this shit ain't gonna last. Oh, I apologize for swearing.
That's okay. That's okay, man. Hey, we got the boop buttons.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I knew it was basically like I knew kind of in college, like early on in college, it was like I'm going to do my own thing. Like it was just, I would walk into a successful business and just inherently kind of start breaking down like why it was successful and what they were doing that was differentiating themselves. And having like I didn't learn that in class. I think I was just born that way.
It's definitely one of those things I don't think you can teach in a classroom. You're either born with it or you have to learn it later on. And
Mhm.
experience teaches you. It's one of those things you just can't learn from a textbook.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I knew from the get-go that like regardless of whatever job I got, probably wasn't gonna pan out. Like I was going to eventually escape to do my own thing. And because I worked for the government for such like a unsatisfying, terribly managed, uh, I don't, they're not a company, but just business, I
Entity.
guess. Entity, sure. That definitely kind of sped up the process. And for the last 6 months, I was basically just planning my exit strategy.
Gotcha. So then fast forward, what exactly are you doing now and how did you get it going?
hmm So these days we design, produce, and distribute podcasts for small to medium-sized businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got into this because when I left my role at NASA, I really had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that I was going to do something for myself. I basically just did a ton of odd jobs. I went on Craigslist, I went on Indeed, I went on a bunch of other kind of job boards, and just like anything that sounded interesting or fun or, creative. I was like, yeah, I'll do that, even if it didn't pay, just so I could try it out, see how it worked.
Yep.
And I've always been a very strong writer. So I ended, and I love film, so I ended up my first kind of unpaid internship at I was like 27, I guess. I was managing the social media for a documentary film, um, and I was like, wow, I'm like really good at this, and it doesn't feel like work. It's easy. The client, even though he wasn't paying me anything, really loves what I'm doing. I was like, I can turn this into a business. Like, I don't need any inventory. I don't need a brick and mortar office or storefront. I was like, I just need people to pay me to do this. And this was like 2011,
Okay.
2012,
Yep.
or thereabouts. And nobody knew anything about social media marketing. Like,
Oh, very, very few people knew how to work it.
yeah,
It was a very different animal back then. I mean, that's already 8 years ago.
yeah, exactly. So I talked my best friend. Well, actually, my best friend talked me into moving to Chicago, and I was already trying to figure out a way to kind of like keep my overhead as low as possible. And when I was living in Orlando, I was balling out of control. I lived in like, it wasn't a penthouse apartment, but it was like just below a penthouse apartment in like downtown Orlando. I could walk to all the bars. I was going out probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 nights a week. And then,
Living the
like,
dream.
yeah, yeah. Living the first job out of college, I finally had some money to waste. Dream, which probably did not help my enjoyment of a corporate job. But my friend talked me into moving to Chicago. It was basically between New York and Chicago, and I talked to all my friends in New York. I was like, "Yo, what's your rent?" And they were like, "A, a crap load." And I went to Chicago, and it was literally a third the cost for rent. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, "There's not that big of a difference between these two cities." In my experience, and I knew that if I could live without a car, that my runway was much longer to actually
Right.
get my business to be successful. And to not need a car, you basically have to live in New York or Chicago, in my opinion.
You need a big city hub like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Florida has no public transportation. There's no subway. There's buses, and I think they come once an hour.
It's a little different. Yeah. Well, New York,
Yeah.
it's built for that. Chicago's built for that.
Yeah,
Just a little different in Florida, different culture, different economy.
yeah, exactly. So I ended up moving to Chicago, crashed on his couch for a month. Within that month, actually, he got fired from his job at Groupon.
Oh, no.
And he was like, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I was like, bro, I'm gonna start a social media marketing company. Why don't you just be my partner? Me thinking that, yeah, we're best friends. Like, we're both writers. We both love
Perfect fit.
movies. Yeah, what could go wrong?
Oh, no.
But there's a huge difference between what makes a great friend and what makes a great business partner.
Two
And I
very different things.
quickly realized that Oh my God, my best friend is incredibly entitled and lazy.
It's a little different putting it into the business world.
Yeah, yeah. So, that I think impeded our growth pretty significantly because it was like I was not only trying to make enough money for me to eat or maybe even take a girl out on a date, God forbid, but I was also, it felt like I was kind of paying for someone else to just kind of hang out.
I hear you. I feel you, man.
Um, so fortunately, we eventually came to the conclusion, or he came to the conclusion that like he didn't like doing this, and we weren't making enough money for him. So he was like, "Yeah, I just want you to buy me out." And I was like, "Well, here's the thing."
No equity to buy out.
Yeah, let's say that I stop just doing anything. There will be no more money that will come in for me to pay you. So no, you were paid for all the work that you did, and we're just gonna. I'll pay you a bit of a severance, but
We're
no,
gonna call it a day at that.
yeah, like if you're really gonna hammer me on this, I'll just start a different company.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
But fortunately, we were able to salvage our personal relationship,
Good.
and that was 2014. So then I had a good amount of clients, a business all to myself, like a solid kind of infrastructure. We had about I don't know, like 4 or 5 people working for us at that point, because I also quickly realized that once you hit a certain amount of clients, you cannot adequately satisfy them and
24 hours in a day.
grow the business. Yeah. So if your goal is to just make 100 grand a year, like you can do that. You can work 40 to 60 hours a week just doing stuff for your current clients, and that's fine. A lot of people seem very happy with that. I am not satisfied with that. That's first of all, it's boring, it's repetitive, and like I don't like doing the work. I like researching, I like designing campaigns, and I like creating processes and managing people. I don't like doing the day to day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not fun for me. And a lot of people love it. They're just like, I come in, I do some work, you pay me, and then I.
Well, to each his own, and that's one of the excuse me, one of the fascinating things with small business. They come in all different shapes, sizes, forms, so on and so forth. There's the solopreneur. It's going to be, yep, I want 5 clients. That's going to be enough for me. I'm happy with that. That's all I want. And there are those who are like, I want to take this global. I want to have 100 employees working for me within 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of it is, what do you want from your business? What do you want it to do for you, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And for me, I wanted basically a significant passive income source. And I was willing to work 80 hours a week for years, even, decades.
Well, that's what it takes. I think a lot of times when someone starts a business, there's a little bit of a misnomer. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to own a business. I'm going to be flush with cash. It's going to be awesome. That's more of a several year goal to get to that point. Best case. I mean, I'm sure you know the statistics. 80 to 85% of businesses go under in that 1 to 3, that first 1 to 3 year period. It takes long hours. It was interesting. One of our podcast guests a couple of months ago, he said, the normal amount of sleep for him was about 3 to 4 hours a night for the first 2 years.
Wow.
Year 3, it's finally started to turn where it's consistently 6 hours. He's like, okay, I feel like I've made it now. But it's true. You have to be willing to put in that 80-hour-a-week effort, because that's what it takes to build it to that point that you're talking about, where it's almost that passive income. It takes time and a lot of effort.
Yeah, yeah. But once it's up there, it's amazing.
Oh, for sure. That's I think when you're talking like, highs and lows, when you're there, it's working the way it's supposed to. You're meeting your clients' needs, you're surpassing expectations. It's like you're riding a complete high. It's like this is exactly the way I dreamt it up. And then of course
Mhm.
you always have the moments like where you're having to split with partners and you're like, okay, this is a little bit of heartburn here. This ain't cool at all. But yeah, that's the small business journey. You're gonna have that. You're gonna have lows where it's like, I can't believe this is it. I can't, is this really worth it? And then you'll have I've never experienced anything better in my life. I'm so fulfilled right now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's yeah, oftentimes within a single day.
It's true though. It's true. It's like the chart to success is like all over the place. But then there are some where it's like it shows like emotional feelings. It's like this is so good. I really made the right call here. And it's like, okay, I don't know if how long I'll be able to go here, maybe another couple of weeks. And it's like, yeah, I definitely made the right call. We'll get through it. Then the next emotion is like, this is so hard. Is it even worth it? It's like a constant back and forth.
Yeah, that reminds me of a semi-profound thought I had maybe like a year ago, because a lot of corporate folks, young people, to be like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, what's like the guaranteed way to be an entrepreneur? And I was like, the only guaranteed way is just to not stop.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's what I like to tell people all the time. Entrepreneurs are very comfortable with risk. If someone is not comfortable with risk, they're very risk averse. Being an entrepreneur probably isn't what they're going to find enjoyable. They might be good at it and very talented, but they're probably not going to enjoy it. I mean, stability, consistency, it's the last thing that really occurs in a small business. By the time you get to that point, I'd wager it's not really a small business anymore. It's probably much more of a mid-sized business
Mhm.
because I mean, exactly. I mean, I can go on and on about it. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. And for anyone to say like, okay, I'm gonna do this in this amount of time, like that's amazing to shoot for, but I would argue that nearly 100% of the time it's not going to work out the way that you think it is.
But that doesn't mean you quit on it, to your earlier point. That
No.
just means, all right, I might be a couple of months behind here, but I'm still going to keep going and we're not going to
Mhm.
stop. You always have to put the plan on paper. It doesn't inherently mean that it's going to happen, but if you don't put the plan on paper, none of it ever happens. I completely agree
Yeah,
with you.
yeah. You have to, I guess, like listen and like react to as much.
For sure, things change too much. I mean,
Yeah.
you could look at 2020 as a prime example. You take a classically consistent industry like restaurants. I mean, it's in a funny way, restaurants really haven't changed a whole lot over the course of 50, 60 years. You come in, you sit down, you have your meal, you go
I
out.
mean, thousands of years.
Yeah, literally. It's you could go way back. And then welcome to 2020. Yeah, that's completely thrown out the window. Restaurant, hope you can find a
Yeah,
way to survive. It's like, well, great. You have to completely flip your model now. I mean, if you
yeah,
don't have a good online presence, if you don't have a good inventory management system that's going to help you integrate curbside orders with your online ordering,
yeah.
it's a completely different ball game
I
now.
I have kind of a unique take on all of that.
Please share.
I of course feel incredibly bad for restaurants, and I try to support them as much as possible. I love going out to eat.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and a lot of the stages are 90% of independent stages are about to go out of business. It's awful. But I don't think that even if a ton of restaurants and even if a ton of stages like do go out of business, like once this pandemic has kind of wore itself out or whatever, it's ended, people aren't going to be like, yeah, they're out of business, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. It's like people will still want to go out to dinner and still want to go to live shows of some sort.
So here's the interesting cultural one. Are we in a bit of a like an industrial or agricultural revolution where things change so much, we're going to see a cultural change? Are we in a temporary blip, or are we permanently changing to where it's, yeah, you'll have indoor dining, but no, it's never going to be like it was, not because you can't, but because people have tasted that efficiency of having it delivered to their doorstep, where it's like, I mean, I can tell you, even I do a lot of work from home now, home officing. It's like, yeah, I can get a DoorDash to my house. I can get, it saves me driving time. It saves me fuel. It's, I mean, the amount of time I get to save, I get to put that right into my work. I mean, so that's a shift. But to your point, the cultural component, what are we seeing? Will it come back? I do think a lot of it will come back. What will it look like? $1 million question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I certainly love getting food delivered, but there's something that's like deeply satisfying about, the social cultural components
Sure.
of going out to eat, of going to a show, of, seeing people, being
Well,
with.
and it's ingrained in our culture, and I would argue in our DNA. I mean, for thousands of years, we're dependent upon that intercultural engagement, that interaction. And obviously, enter lockdowns or shutdowns for an extended period of time, it kind of gets you going stir crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. It will come back at some point. I think if I had to take a guess, it's probably going to be different. What different means, that I don't know. I can't tell you. That's one of the, he who has the answer to that's going to be a multi-billionaire.
Well, I also have a theory on that, or a prediction, I guess.
Share away.
So, I'm a very curious person. So through my research into the last major pandemic, the 1918 flu, so that was the precursor that destroyed, 50 to 100 million people died. It destroyed the economy, it destroyed dining out. I'm sure any shows were shut down. And what came right after that ended? It ended like March or April of 1920. It officially was just over. Like what happened after that in that time?
I know right where you're going with this.
The Roaring '20s. So in my mind, that pandemic was the equivalent to when like Native Americans would burn down a forest so that a stronger forest could grow from it.
It's the concept of it's a sad concept if you're the business that goes under, but the idea is that that business that goes under becomes fertilizer for the next upcoming business. They learn from the mistakes, they see how things have changed, they adapt to it, and then you grow something bigger and stronger following.
Yeah, with a consumer base that is just insanely ready to spend money and overconsume.
Well, you have to have a lot of things going your way, absolutely. And if things line up that way, that would be awesome. I mean, for example, we get a vaccine here in the next couple of months rolled out, and if it really works, then the population takes it, and we see all those numbers drop, deaths drop, hospitalizations drop, and you can pretty much say, yeah, COVID's officially pretty much gone within a matter of months. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what your prediction is. You're going to see a little bit of a Roaring '20s 100 years later.
I think it's the Roaring 2020s.
There you go. I like it. So okay, that's going to be a fun transition here. 15, 20 minutes or so. We have talked about this beforehand. You had been working on 3 tips for business owners. I think this ties in exactly really, really well with that prediction. Please share and discuss.
Sure. I think I briefly touched on a couple of them. My first tip, and this has really been kind of the key to my ability to achieve success, ability to continue to tread water, and that's keep your overhead low.
That's a good one.
I think my dad just kind of instilled this in me from a very young age. I distinctly remember, because my dad was a very successul stockbroker, and we would hang out with the stockbroker friends, and they had kids who were around my age, and we'd be driving home in my dad's little like coupe car, whatever. I think it was a Beamer, but it was like 24 grand for the car.
Yep.
And my dad's friend would be driving $120,000 like big swinging Mercedes. and I knew, even I'm 8, I'm like, you and that guy have the exact same job. Like, why is he driving a car that costs 5 times as much as yours? And my dad, without skipping a beat, to his credit, goes, I don't want to work forever. And that just burned into my brain. I was like, yeah, it's way more fun to, you can have so much fun living frugally. Like 80% as much fun as living.
Oh, I
balling.
think that's such a really good application for business owners, because especially here in year 2020, there are a lot of really cool toys you can buy for your business. You can enhance this, you can build this up, make this flashy, get more attention over here, increase this, play with this lever. But do you actually need it? Start off with the essentials, go with what you need, and you can add the wants later on. I think that keeping overhead low is so huge. It's applicable, it's to the point. I think it's one of those things too. Everyone knows exactly what it means right off the bat. Anything you don't need, hold off on.
Yeah. And I think, one of the silver linings of the pandemic is the realization that, like, hey, maybe we don't need like a massive office. Maybe the majority of our staff can work from home, like even on their own equipment.
I was going to say, well, you talk about another massive change to our economy. Yeah, what happens to commercial real estate? I mean, we're heavily invested in virtual reality. We have people working together in, I think it's 4 different states with about 7 different legal entities.
Wow.
But we don't skip a beat. And to your point, yeah, we don't have to have one centralized office location. It expands opportunity for us. It expands our different business networks. I completely agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and then you think about just the toll that commuting takes on someone, on your workers. Like,
well, I'll give you a funny testament to that one. I ran a calculation. In the year 2019, I had 27 24-hour days of driving all on the road. 2020. And it just added up. It's like you're going to this event, you're going over here, you're driving from, Rockwall to Dallas, maybe out to Greenville, down to Terrell. And it's like half hour here, 40 minutes there, 25 minutes there. And the next thing you know, it's almost a full month in pure driving. Whereas you come 2020, you cut all that out. You put, say, half of it into actual production. Not only did you increase production then, but you also improved efficiency. And that's the type of a combination that you're talking about. There's a funny opportunity here to not only improve your effectiveness as a business, but also improve your efficiency.
Yeah. And I would argue quality of life, because sitting in traffic is one of my least favorite things.
Well, wait a minute. You don't like sitting in traffic with horns honking and all of that stuff, that blood pressure?
I actually, I recently moved to Los Angeles because I was like, there's a pandemic and Chicago winter. Like, no. No, I can do one or the other.
I can't blame you for that, man.
Yeah. And you obviously need a means of transport here. And I was like, I'm not waiting in this freaking traffic. So I was like, what are my options? And one of my buddies was like, dude, just get a moped. And in California, you're legally allowed to drive down the center of traffic.
Well, there you go. Then that's going to save you time.
So it's like, not only am I getting 100 miles to the gallon, but I'm like barely waiting in any traffic.
Life buzz. Okay,
Yeah.
So we got tip number 1 at keep overhead low. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2. Always have young people on your staff. I'm talking like college interns, like 18 to 22-year-olds. In my experience, these folks teach you what the world will look like in 5 years. They're already on the social media app that you haven't even heard of. They're using some sort of tool, some sort of website, even existing tools in a very unique and interesting way that everyone will be using it in 5 years.
It's a great way to look into the future to see what people are using, where people are spending time. And then this was the other one that hit me about a year ago, what people value. I mean, there was an interesting presentation at a Chamber of Commerce about a year and a half ago or so. And different generations value different things. I mean, to your earlier point about entrepreneurs and being risk takers and risk averse. The commission model was a very, very successful one back then. The younger generation greatly prefers stability. And to your point about staying in touch with that younger demographic, you'll be able to really position your business for the future. That's an interesting one.
And to qualify it, what I've found is they inevitably become mini me's of me, like they're my clones.
Okay, so give us an example of this if you can, please, because this is fascinating.
Yeah. So as I touched on previously, one of my favorite things to do is to create processes. Like if I do a task once and then I'm like, cool, that I had to do some research, I did it a specific way, like I threw my unique perspective, creative execution into it.
Right.
And then it's like, all right, I got to do it again. It's like, I don't want to do it again. Like, I want to just create a process and hire someone whose hourly cost is.
Then you can keep doing it and get it that's sustainable, repeatable, predictable.
Exactly. So what I found is that, I can hire low skilled labor to do a lot of it, but to manage the low skilled labor, to hire them, to train them, I can also create processes for that. And then kind of monitor and train and hone and mold kind of the cream of the crop of who I've hired. And then, typically I'm hiring them at 18. They're working with me part-time, like college interns. And then when they graduate, I'm like, you could be CEO. Like, everything that I know, and you have way more energy, and you're not as kind of beaten down.
Okay, so with your strategy, you're very much of the developmental approach. You're empowering them, you're developing them to have a bigger role and consistently move up that ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah. And it's, most college kids are very, they're minded, they're excited, they're creative, they bring, a unique perspective, especially if we are selling something to folks their age.
For sure. Absolutely. Then it becomes exponentially more important.
Yeah.
Because what better way to tap into what that customer avatar, so to speak, values? What are those triggers? What inspires and motivates them to follow through on that call to action? Whether it's clicking a link, whether it's reading something, whether it's making a purchase, whatever it might be, you've got your own data set within your organization.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hiring my target customer, essentially.
Brilliant. Fascinating. Okay, that's another really cool one. So what's tip number 3 then?
Tip number 3 is kind of, it's very subtle, but I have noticed a profound effect from this. And I stole this from one of the most important books that I've ever read, or probably the most important book I've ever read. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. My dad gave that to me when I was like 15, and I read it. And I mean, if you were like looking at my life on like a trajectory, it went from like to like bam, just like way better.
It's truth. It's such a powerful, applicable book.
Yeah, with friends, with girls, with superiors, whatever. Just everything improved thanks to that book. But the specific takeaway from that book that I'm talking about is notice small things that your employees or team members do and tell them in person or via email at least every payday. And these are small good things, like, they wrote this amazing title for this podcast, or they, went above and beyond for this blog post, or they, were super detail oriented and caught something that shows that they are really working their butts off. And what I found is, when you a company that with payment, a lot of the feedback, like unsolicited feedback that I get from them, a lot of my team is they're like, yeah, hey, the money is awesome, but this node is better.
Okay, see, that's one of the funny things that was mentioned at that Chamber of Commerce lunch I was telling you about. It's the recognition. That is a really notice the small things, make it an outgoing, proactive effort. Say, hey, you did a particularly good job on that. Nicely done.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about the podcast. Can you walk us through one quick example
Of
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 how
the
you do that? Yeah, of how someone did something good. Was it just a simple email? Hey, literally just a one sentence. You did a great job. Nicely done! Exclamation point. Or
I try to be as specific as possible. So I do keep like a running tally of things that I notice. Like for instance, one of our kind of legacy clients who I just don't have the bandwidth to manage anymore. He's been with us since 2012. Um, I basically just gave it all to one of our team members. I was like, hey, can you just like write the content and schedule and just handle all this? Like this doesn't fit in our workflow anymore. But whatever. And he does a great job with it. And I realized I hadn't thought about it in like a month. I hadn't thought about this client in like a month. I was like, oh crap. Like, and I checked their campaign and everything was perfect. Like the team member that I gave it to was just crushing it. And I didn't even wait till payday to tell him this. I immediately sent him a message on WhatsApp, which is like our internal communication medium. And I go, Tristan, dude, I just gotta give you an attaboy, man. Like I completely forgot to even double check any of this stuff, and you did not skip a beat, and you crushed it. And he was just like, oh well, thank you so much for noticing, and yeah, I've really just kind of dialed in the process for doing it.
I love it. I see those three things are so applicable. Keep overhead low. Always have young people on staff so you can keep a touch point on where things are and where things are going. And then notice and recognize the small things. I think that's one of the things I think really contributes to a strong organizational culture. And especially at a time like now where it's tough to retain quality people because of all the contraction, the shrinkage of the economy. I think it's huge. That'll help you retain that talent.
Yeah, agreed. And from personal experience, from having bosses who did whatever the opposite of that is, I know how damaging, unmotivating, and just destructive,
Demoralizing,
kind of not being an in tune, like appreciative manager, like how much damage that can do. And the opposite, how much it can help, how much it can motivate.
It's one of those funny things. You've got two opposite spectrums. You're going to have toxic culture, no one wants to be a part of it. And the other one is you have a super strong culture where it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
I love it. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you coming on, sharing the life story, sharing what you do, what got you into it, and then those three tips. Those are fantastic, man. It's hugely applicable, and I think very helpful for business owners kind of looking into the future, especially for 2021. All things that can be implemented right away. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, John, thanks so much for having me on. Do you mind if I plug my newest venture?
Please go for it.
Sweet, man. So it's called famousfounder.com. And we have it's a podcast design, production, and distribution company. Like I said earlier, we specialize in helping small to medium-sized businesses create a podcast that then we repurpose as bite-sized social media and email blast content. So even if you're like, oh, my audience doesn't listen to podcasts, it's like, well, do they go on Instagram?
Find how to meet them where they are and then pull them where you need them to be.
Yeah. And the one of the biggest ahas that we've had while running this business is the podcast is great, is such an amazing way to create high value content. You don't have to write anything. You don't have to create a video. You don't have to edit anything. It's like you have an amazing conversation like we're having right now.
Exactly.
And then you just find the best parts, find the highlights, find the most valuable nuggets of wisdom or information, and turn that into bite-sized content for your social media.
It's true. It's true. And I can speak to it because we've seen the personal impact of that. When you have that podcast, that discussion, you can take those tidbits, you can really get some good things out of there. And I think that also ties into one of the things that kind of really got the McGraw Council going. Small business owners don't know everything. They know they need to market. They know they need to have things like that. Or they might even be like, yeah, I need a podcast. I don't know how to do it. I don't have the technical know-how. That's okay. But there are people out there who do. And that's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's basically why we created the business. Because for years we were trying to get business owners to share their immense quantities of knowledge. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll just write a blog post. And like, I don't think one blog post was ever written in the last 8 years of me doing this business, but thousands of podcasts have been recorded and enjoyed recording. It's fun.
It's a different level of interaction. And again, that's talk about, customer engagement, engaging that client base or that prospect base. It can be a very powerful tool if done correctly. And that's why you get the experts such as yourself to help with it. So we might be having a discussion, my man. I might have to follow up with you here.
Yeah, anytime, man. You're a great host. I have to
appreciate it.
I have to give it up to you, man. This is and I know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That's reassuring. At least we're on the right track here.
Yeah. No, you're a natural. I don't know how long you've been doing it, man, but you got it.
Truth be told, little secret just breaks out. Less than 3 months. Don't tell anyone.
Oh, wow.
But that's okay. We're getting the point across. Wait, tell you what, we're going to put this one on record. If you got time early next year, I would love for you to come into our virtual reality, maybe do a seminar on content creation, releasing it, and that type of thing, because that's something I think a lot of people, a lot of small business owners would need to know more about.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to send you an email follow-up to this. We're going to get that on the calendar, my man.
Let's do it.
Excellent. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure, John. It was great.
You stay safe. Have a great week and a happy Thanksgiving.
All right, brother. You as well.
Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.